Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare.
All right, good to have everyone here. So last week, we were tapping into the practical application of how do we engage with Buddhism. This text that we've been going through, Approaching the Buddhist Path, was really designed to address some of the Western mind, some of the Tibetan culture, some of the Asian culture, some of the Buddhist words that can get really confusing. So we spent a great deal of time just kind of, okay, how's this work in our culture, and how do we approach this? And so now, nearing the end of the book, they're giving us practical advice. And so we left off on the three wisdoms: hearing the teaching, contemplating, analyzing the teaching, and then meditation. So the idea always is, yes, we receive a teaching, we could read a book, we can come to a Dharma teaching, we can receive a direct teaching from someone. But that's just the first little bit. Maybe that teaching's no good. Maybe the teaching doesn't make sense. Maybe it isn't, it doesn't add up. So the next phase is where we really tear it apart. We analyze it. Does that make sense? Does that hold up? Is this practical? And as the Buddha had always taught, never take anything on face value. Test it. See if it works. Does it hold up? So last week we were getting into the analyzing the teaching. And we got into some pretty deep water about the nature of phenomena and all that, structures. So I think it'll be a little more productive if we get into those structures of how to approach those analytical methods later when we get into Lam Rim. I think more practically for us, it is to think about the teachings. Does this make sense? Does that help? Is there something I'm not okay with? And be real clear about that. It's not very helpful to just take something on, blind faith. Blind faith does not work very well. And the vast majority of all Buddhism all has to make sense. It has to be logical. It has to be testable. So then the next is meditation. So that's where I want to pick up. Oops, let's see. There we go. So hear a teaching, really dig into it, analyze it, see how it holds up, see if it holds up with this very thoughtful structure of approach with logic and reasoning. And then once we feel like, okay, that's something I make sense, and I have some realization. I'm going from just hearing a teaching to something that, yeah, this works. Well, then we get to meditation. So based on learning and critical reflection on the teachings, our meditation will be effective. The purpose of meditation is to integrate the meaning of the teachings into our mind stream by means of repeated practice. Having a correct and stable intellectual understanding due to applying the four principles, we now engage in absorption meditation to familiarize our mind with the topic and transform intellectual understanding into realization. So it's really going from an intellectual discussion to analyzing to now letting that settle in so we have a bit of a realization. Here, meditation mainly, but not exclusively, involves stabilizing meditation done with access or full concentration. So talking about that shamatha, so we can really have a mind that is a very functional tool. Although analytical meditation may be applied at times. This produces the understanding arising from meditation, which has a powerful ability to transform our minds. So those are the two foundational categories of meditation. One is concentration, stability of mind. It's what we just did at the start. And then analytical, well, we can contemplate something, we can bring it to mind in meditation and kind of attack it, approach it. Does that hold up? And the way that they traditionally teach this is, I've received a teaching, I've thought about it, I've analyzed it, I've got some sense of, yeah, okay, I get that. And then we can meditate with that realization and let that kind of soak in. So learning, critical reflection, and meditation complement each other. Some people incorrectly think these three apply to sutra practice, but Tantra is actualized through devotion and faith, so study and analysis are not necessary. Yeah, I always like to have the shortcut. Get the blessing, get the thing. Oh, yeah. The Kadam Geshes, who practice both Sutra and Tantra, used to say, when I hear teachings, I also reflect and meditate. When I reflect, I also hear and meditate. When I meditate, I hear and critically reflect. So, these are all really in union. Learning gives us general knowledge of the topic and reduces one level of confusion and doubt. Thinking about and analyzing teachings gives us a more nuanced conceptual understanding based on reason. Meditating integrates this understanding with our very being. In the case of realizing the nature of reality, hearing and studying the teachings gives us a general knowledge about the object of negation. The rational arguments proving that all phenomena lack inherent existence, and the stages of realizing emptiness. So it's a process that unfolds as we investigate. By then contemplating and discussing what we've studied, we come to understand that the I does not exist inherently as it appears, but exists dependently. The I is empty of inherent existence because it is dependent on the 5 psychophysical aggregates, 5 skandhas, and on the mind designating I. The emptiness that we have ascertained by reflection now becomes the object of meditation. In meditation, we now cultivate a union of serenity and insight on emptiness, shamatha and vipassana. And that's basically how the Buddha woke up. Stabilized the mind, took that shamatha, and then with that stabilized mind, used insight and vipassana, analytical, and just probed the very nature of his experience. And as they put here, just to make it real simple, simple as I can, the object of negation. And that's a really skillful Buddhist approach, is what we do is we find out what we're not. What we're not, right? So I don't inherently exist from my own side, right? John is kind of a construct in my mind. There's a body here, but this body is dependent upon my parents and their union and their parents and the air I breathe and the food I've eaten and, just all these aspects that have come together. There's no independence here, right? I can only exist independence upon and only come into being independence upon countless conditions. The fact that I can sit here and talk to you is because of education, because of learning to read and write, because of people that paid taxes. So there's a school system, people who built buildings. I'm drinking tea here. I'm not even sure how many people are involved in that bag of tea that I put in. There's no independent, separate self and so it doesn't say you don't exist. It's saying, well, I don't exist in the way I feel like I exist. So it's very independent and very much interdependent. And I am constantly becoming. I'm not the same John that was here yesterday or 10 years ago. And tomorrow, if I'm alive, body changes, mind changes. Even in this day, I might go from happy to frustrated to, certain qualities develop. So that it's much more a stream of being. But it feels very solid, like I'm this way, right? I'm an impatient person, except when you're patient. Are you impatient or are you patient? All of these ways that we think about ourselves. So it's starting to go, okay, maybe I'm a human being that is impatient sometimes and patient other times, right? So the investigation is starting to see how subject, object, action, how we interrelate, and there's much more going on. When I think of someone that I like, I kind of think, yeah, I know Kevin. Yeah, man, Kevin's like this. But I don't really know Kevin, right? I mean, all the aspects of your nuances of your life. I often think sometimes a good analogy for me is Robert Redford. I like Robert Redford. I've never met Robert Redford. I have no idea what he's really like, but I have an idea in my mind of what he's like, right? And I believe it to be true, But we do that for so many things and people and events, and we don't understand that based on my culture, my upbringing, the conditions, like some people, not like some other people, and that I'm bringing a lot to that party. It's not just how they exist. So the process is negating the way things don't exist, so I can start to see more clearly how they exist, how I exist. And so that's what he was talking about here with the object of negation. So the idea is, then we work with that during the day. Am I angry or am I experiencing anger? Will that come and go? Will I be different? If I change my perspective on how I'm attending to someone, will I have a different experience with them? I just found out they have cancer and it's someone I didn't like. Well, maybe now I don't have some compassion, just how am I attending to someone, something? So the idea is to receive these teachings, to really work with them. And then there's two aspects of meditation they bring up. One is to have a steady meditation practice of shamatha, like what we just did to start, where we do that every day so that our mind can be tamed and we can use our mind more clearly to analyze, to receive the teachings, to be present for them, and to let them soak in. And then the analytical meditation, we can go in from time to time.
So to do insight meditation or analytical meditation, would it be like the same length of time that you sit down for 20 minutes and just say, like, I want to think about, I want to absorb, focus this meditation on emptiness?
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, you could set, a specific time to do it. Not necessary, and it doesn't have to match the shamatha. I spent a weekend once on the precious human life, the verses that we read each morning. This opportune physical form is more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. Those two verses. And I took a retreat, and I just spent the whole weekend going through that, in all my sessions. And that was, long time ago. But even though I hadn't even thought about them in like years, they're very present. I can quote them; they're right there. I mean, there's a visceral experience. But you could, like what we do with transforming unskillful events, that kind of, here's the way I reacted that I didn't feel good about. And what was the condition for that? What was my, why did I react that way? That's a insight meditation. You're gaining some wisdom, and then, seeing how I could act in a healthier way, respond instead of react. So anything that is getting analytical or contemplative, even in the sense of, we always talk about death is certain, time of death uncertain, right? Well, that's a nice conversation. We can all agree on that, right? But what would it be like to really feel that, like that each day is so precious? I don't know how many I have, because in my mind, I'm still planning for next Tuesday, right? But what if I really knew that? And, that's what we try to do each morning, is just, this is a day that will never come again in my life, ever. And I don't know how many I have. And that meditation, they have 9-part meditation on death. And that would be a contemplative one where you do it every day. And the idea is then you wouldn't fear death. And you would live each day really like, wow, I have tea. Wow, I'm with some people. Whoa, this is, it's just, you just savor it. And, but, it's really hard to get to that place without a steady sort of bringing it to mind, sitting with that, bringing to mind people who have passed and so forth. Otherwise, it's just an intellectual conversation. Like, yeah, I get that. I'm still planning my vacation next day. And you still plan, but you just know that it's all, it's all precious. All right, anyone out there have any thoughts or comments before we veer into the next section, which is about making progress? You guys are going to be like that. Okay. I was prepared for that. I want to get down here to making progress. All of us want our Dharma practice to bear fruit, but even with good intentions, it is easy to deviate from the path. We can get sidetracked in several ways. Being aware of the potential pitfalls in advance helps us to avoid them, and knowing the signs of making progress on the path enables us to accurately assess our practice. So I'm borderline having a hiccup. Realistic expectations. Well, that's one of my favorite topics. We have both a useful and useless sense of self. The unrealistic sense of self operates without sound reason, just on the grounds of, I want this or that. This sense of self is the root of our dukkha, samsara, the suffering nature conditioning, and is eliminated by the realization of emptiness. The positive sense of self operates on the basis of reason. It is the basis for bodhisattvas' strong self-confidence, without which they would be unable to confront and subdue the self-centered attitude. Afflictions are overcome in stages, not all at once. The first time a layer of them is eradicated is upon gaining a direct non-conceptual perception of emptiness. Before that, when we encounter circumstances that give rise to our afflictions, we must practice ethical conduct and employ the antidotes specific to each affliction in order to prevent harmful behavior. So, not sure if it's His Holiness in this voice or whether it's Tujin children, but there's a journey right here. I do not have direct experience of the ultimate nature of reality, not there yet. That will eradicate all these sort of misperceptions. But I can start making a lot of progress just by being ethical. So that's where we get into merit and good karma, good ethical behaviors, virtue. And that's universal. That's not Buddhist. Aristotle will be explaining to you the value of virtue. And the more that we engage in virtue, the less afflictive states we'll have. So that's across the board, all religions. I think we get there. And then the antidotes. So as I engage with others with virtue, as I engage in the world with virtue, I can also start to notice mental afflictions as they arise, and I can start to apply these antidotes that have been taught to us. And I can start to notice things like some positive, proactive steps to even alleviate afflictions, such as recognizing here's a day that will never come again in my life. How do I want to live it? If I were to die today, would I feel good about how I lived? If I do that proactively in the morning, I mention frequently that, I'll think about the good qualities of my wife when I wake up in the morning and what I admire about her and what those qualities are. And I do that consciously on purpose. And then, when I see her, she's like Madonna, like, oh, hey, how you doing? And, but if I don't do that, it doesn't naturally arise. I mean, I'll see her, I might be in a good mood, might be in a bad mood, might go back to the whole doesn't put dishes in the dishwasher right thing or whatever. So what I can start to recognize is I can proactively water the thoughts, the attitudes that are more accurate and more beneficial in my mind. So what you water grows. A lot of people spend time with a little gratitude in the morning, right? Well, if I'm thinking about what I have, you're not going to be angry, frustrated, or, resentful if you're in gratitude. So can I water that? Always accurately, though, not Pollyanna. So these are very proactive things that we can do every single day that's going to alleviate afflictive states, that are self-centered, self-grasping, judgmental in ways that are really unproductive. So while we're on that journey, merit and wisdom, we can also start to recognize that there are no jerks in the world. That's a good wisdom. There are people who are acting jerky in a moment, and but they're not inherently jerky, right? I know I've been a jerk, and I've been kind, and then likewise. And so just working with things like this, how someone's arising in a moment in this experience might have something to do with me, and I didn't sleep well last night, or I'm self-obsessed, or it might be they're doing something really harmful. But that's not who they are. That's who they are in that moment. 2 hours later, they might be helping their mom, who's, suffering. They might be picking up trash. I don't know all those things, right? So these wisdom pieces start to recognize how we engage in the world in this very transitional and permanent way of being, and how things show up based on our own conditioning and my attitudes. And so we work on that so we get merit and wisdom as we live through our days. And we're much more skillful in how we engage, and much more accurate, hopefully, in how we engage. I'm having a bit of a lung thing here, so I think I'll live to the next 15 minutes. We'll see. All right, so that's what he's making the point, until you get to that full realization, these are the steps that we take, and it unfolds incrementally over time. Those of you who do the morning practice with me, always talking about merit and wisdom. That's what we're doing all day long. And virtue, the merit, is the fertilizer for our wisdom. And then the wisdom, we want to kind of understand our experience a little more accurately. Now, to develop such self-control, two factors are crucial: a sense of personal integrity and consideration for others. Personal integrity enables us to abandon negativities because we respect our values and precepts. Consideration for others does this because we care about the effect of our bad behavior on others. How am I affecting someone in a healthy way, a positive way, an unhealthy way, or a harmful way? Some people mistakenly believe that if they do some spiritual practice for a short time, they will continue to progress even if they do not actively practice. If we practice consistently, progress will definitely occur. But if we do not, our afflictions will arise effortlessly and lead to destructive actions, bringing more misery. So here's kind of I'm going to try to be inspiring and not depress you all at once, but it's probably going to sound a little overwhelming at first. Well, let's be positive about it. We've had, all of us, lots of years of afflictive living, right? Lots of conditioning, lots of habits, some habits not so good, lots of judgments, lots of unhealthy habits or tendencies or judgments. And then I'm going to start a Buddhist practice. I'm going to go open that book and I do a little morning meditation. I'm going to spend a good half hour in the morning. Yeah. Day's never coming again. Have my mind clear. Going to greet everyone, develop my heart and mind out to all others. And I do that for a half hour. And then there's 16 hours in the day. How much of that is habit? How much of that is just, the conditioning, the way I'm acting? I totally forget at 10 o'clock what my intention was at 8 o'clock. And, all the things that go on. So what happens is a lot of people, I do this little bit of practice and I'm good. And then 16 hours a day, I'm running rampant. It's not an even balance, right? So that doesn't sound very optimistic, does it? But the idea is that, throughout the day, that's why we encourage people at 3 to 6 times a day to just pause, take a few breaths, and then remember, here's a day that's never going to come again. How do I want to be? Just these little reminders, sometimes Post-it notes, sometimes little reminders. Sometimes, people have an image of their teacher or a role model or a quote, just all of these reminders so that we don't get lost for 16 hours, that we practice this a little bit. And if we do think about or contemplate or in between teachings, read a verse and just kind of think about for the day. I like the idea for me, what I used to do, haven't done it lately, is just take, just a little verse. It's inspiring and make a point to read it a few times a day. It just gets my mind back to what's relevant. And in that way, I don't get so far off. And then it does make progress. We're making progress every day. But the point being made is it's not going to be like that, I mean, I remember going to my first Chenrezig Sig practice, it's Buddha of Compassion, in Long Beach, California, by a teacher, she gets up there, and and you do this nice visualization, and then you get purified. All negativities of body, speech, and mind, all washed away. And you really want to hold that. And I still could be a jerk an hour later, and it's but it all makes a little imprint. And that's what we want to keep doing. We want to keep putting drops in the cup. Let it fill. And this unfolds. But it unfolds with, this consistency that we can bring to it. I think he's going to make another point on that. So Vajrayana, we have the sutras, we have Theravada, and we have these different lineages of practices, Zen Buddhism, Pure Land, so forth. The Tibetans, Vajrayana Buddhism, speaks of awakening in this life. Some traditions or teachers speak of a direct, swift path to awakening. Hearing this, some people develop unrealistic expectations, thinking they will have quick results from doing just a little practice, like I have. Personally speaking, all of these statements remind me of communist propaganda. I don't know why I need to throw the communist part in there. Propaganda. So, how then would we understand the statements in some tantric texts that one attains awakening in one moment? If this is the case, why do we need to practice step by step, as stated in all the other teachings? To understand them correctly, we must know the context within which these statements are made. The meaning of one moment and one short instant varies in different situations. The duration of a phenomenon is understood in relation to other phenomena. Compared to beginninglessness of cyclic existence, the age in which we live is like one moment. Likewise, when one attains strong concentration, hundreds of eons may appear to that person as just one moment. And one moment may appear as an eon. If a person has accumulated extensive merit in their previous lives, they may gain realization or attain awakening in this life. In this case, one lifetime is the meaning of one moment. But this is so tip of the iceberg, right? It could happen in this lifetime, could happen in this moment. But from a Buddhist perspective, we've been around since beginningless time. So all these habits and conditions keep ripening. So that moment, we just don't know how close we are. So it didn't happen without having done this other process of creating the conditions. But this does not mean that this person completed the entire path in only one brief lifetime. That person must have collected extensive merit and wisdom during many lifetimes, such that when they meet a particular external situation in this lifetime, realizations or awakening appear to come swiftly. Eons ago, they began the path as an initial level practitioner and actualized the steps to awakening gradually, life after life. The swift results in the present life are the product of hard work in previous lives. Let's see out here. Yeah, okay. I think we knew a couple more paragraphs. Westerners are practical and want immediate results. Didn't sound right, does it? Their eagerness to see results motivates them to practice. However, if they go on retreat and return home at more or less the same level, They may think Dharma practice does not work and give it up. Tibetans may go to the other extreme. They believe in the 5 paths and 10 bodhisattva grounds, but tend to be complacent and think these things can be developed later, next life. Then yes, they lack a sense of urgency and do not exert a lot of effort. Is it Dusty? Dusty, are you online? Is Dusty online? Okay. Yeah, he's talking about some, I think it was Nepalese people he's hanging out with. Loving, joyful, he's in Nepal, and they're Buddhists, and they're, these Buddhist teachers, and they're drinking beer, Chang, and they're drinking beer and doing this stuff. And he's all like, is that really, he goes, next lifetime. Next lifetime. So could be a little lax in that way. So didn't do the story justice, but you get the idea. It seems hybrid practitioners are best. Those who are motivated, enthusiastic, and practice what they learn, but who are also relaxed and patient. These practitioners seek awakening quickly for the benefit of all sentient beings, but accept that it will take a long time to become Buddhists and are willing to practice however long it takes. I think we're going to get into something deep here. So I'm going to pause at that moment and point out the thing that we can lean into here is that our lives can improve right now by doing these practices. So there's an instant reward, right? There's already less anger, less frustration, more resiliency, an ability to adapt quicker, a quality of life that comes about. You don't have to believe in multiple lifetimes. You don't have to believe in any of those things. If I live more ethically, and if I train my mind to not be a prisoner of every thought and worry and fear and projection, and can focus on the present moment, and if I can engage with others more accurately, our quality of life will be better right here, right now. And so when people are always comparing to, I want to be a Dalai Lama or I want to be a Buddha, that can seem very far away. But if we look at, if I've been practicing and I go back a couple of years, am I more peaceful, more resilient? How's my life different? Oh, okay, this is working now. And for me, I think that's the approach, is that I can see right here, right now, the utility of living an ethical life with a trained mind that's wise. I mean, that's basically it. Ethics, concentration, wisdom. That's the whole of the path right there. So if I'm more ethical, and if I'm able to have better attention, and I'm able to understand the world more accurately, there's not a downside there.
Another question on the
Okay. Thank you. If we practice consistently, do we pick up where we left off in the next life, or do we have to start over? Why don't we remember what we've learned in past lives? You don't necessarily pick up where you're at. The karmic seeds that ripen, the idea of a what we call stored consciousness, like all the imprints of all of our experiences are in the stored consciousness. And it's not like you go anywhere, really. It's this body dies and your consciousness starts seeing itself differently. Right? Kind of spirity kind of world. You can see all that in all those books where they talk about things like that. in Buddhism, they'll identify exactly what it feels like to die, what elements, what that feels like, what the pressure is, what you experience, right to the thing. And then in this sort of transitional state. And then at some point, you'll start seeing yourself differently, right? It's not like go out of this body into something. It's just consciousness just continues. Consciousness just continues. And so based on the conditions, and the conditions aren't always just yours, right? Not much is just yours. As we mentioned, wasn't for my mom and dad. I didn't create this body. And so everything in my life is, dependent on all these other conditions and karmas and beings. And so how we start seeing ourselves, well, also from that perspective, the karma might be ripening from many lifetimes ago, not this last one. And so that part is unclear. However, having said that, they will guarantee you could get another good human life by being ethical. So the cause for a human life is ethical behavior. And the cause to continue on the path where we're at, where you can do it, is this bodhisattva aspiration of engaging in this life to be of benefit to others. And the more that you can connect with that bodhicitta, the more likely it is you just continue on that journey. And we're purifying karma, and we're helping others, and we're gaining wisdom, and we have this bodhisattva aspiration. That's why we always start, and when we finish, we dedicate. It's imbuing our mind stream with bodhicitta, great compassion for all beings. And then that will be more likely to ripen. And why you don't remember that, it's kind of like, a good analogy in between life to life is sleep. You go to sleep, you might have a dream. I think we all dream. We might remember it, we might not remember it. And sometimes you wake up, you have vivid clarity. Other times, not at all. A lot of younger people will have vivid memories when they're young, and they just kind of drift away. And then there's people who have vivid, there's a bunch of books recently with pretty empirical research now about investigating, like these people really investigated, where people do remember. So the Tibetan lamas, like my teacher, Geshe Gyaltsen, they train to be conscious through the whole death process and conscious into the next life. So that's what they do. They meditate, they go through those, watch the elements dissolve in their body, they practice that. And they do that throughout their lifetime. And we posted the story about my teacher. I was there when he died, and he was in a state of meditation for 3 days, even though his physical body was dead. He was pronounced dead. And then when his consciousness left, 2 big rainbows came over the place. Just, that whole thing, I got to see that with my own eyes. So that was interesting. And then take his holy body back to India 2 weeks later without any decay. And, the fragrance was still nice. And just all those things they talk about. I saw all that. And now there's a little boy, and they gave him all the tests, they put out all the stuff. And that was my mala, that was my thing. And, and so there's, his next life. And that kid remembered all those things, right? There's others that will have those vivid memories, but as they get older, it just fades. And then, there's a lot of factors in that. But so what people do as an analogy to that is they learn lucid dreaming. So you can be awake in your dreams, right? You can be conscious. There's not even Buddhist books, Stephen LeBerge and all that. You can be conscious and do that. So you can learn how to be conscious and awake through your dreams and be an active participant in them, consciously knowing it's a dream. And then, so similarly, you can also practice this. So dream yoga is a Buddhist practice in that way. So hopefully that answered some of your questions there.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, that's a fun way to wrap. So, go hit my inhaler. So let's dedicate, and then I think Rachel has a couple announcements. We'll wrap up. So those of you who would care to, the idea of dedication is to dedicate all of our time and energy and merit that we've cultivated for the benefit of others and for our own continued spiritual growth. So just taking a moment in our hearts to dedicate our time and energy for the benefit of others. They may be free of suffering, and for our own continued spiritual growth, we can continue this path and be of ultimate benefit to all. Let's begin. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare